friends. I'm in a bit of a pickle. I started this channel thinking that I was going to read the 7 Dungeon Crawler Carl books and make all those videos before the 8th book comes out on May 12th, and that's not happening. That is not happening. I finished book 5, which is The Butcher's Masquerade. So good, by the way. And realized that I have 8 days just to read books 6 and 7, not even to make those videos. I haven't even made the video for the 2nd book yet. And to top it all off, book 6 is 794 pages, and book 7 is 859 pages. So that means in 8 days, I need to read 1,653 pages. That's 207 pages a day, and that's cutting it real close for me. To be honest, I'm just a slow reader. That's just it. So 207 pages in 8 days that's going to be cutting it real close. So I decided that it would be really fun to make it an official challenge to skip all those videos leading up to this. We'll see. Can I do 207 pages a day for the next 8 days? And we're already off to a rocky start because I got 198 pages read yesterday. For those at home, that's 9 pages short. So we're going to see how this goes. Wish me luck. So the Eye of the Bedlam Bride starts off breaking our hearts. Just broke my heart immediately. We finally learn about Odette and Mordecai. I was prepared for it to be heartbreaking, but I wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't. Odette only had 5 more seasons left. That's, like, I understand, we get her thought process, so I understand what she was thinking and how she was feeling, but I don't understand being that close to being done, having experienced all of that herself, watching other people experience it as well, and she couldn't wait 5 more seasons. Girl. And what makes it so much more heartbreaking than I thought it was going to be is that Mordecai was going to sacrifice himself. He was prepared for it, to save the others and get them through. And even Chaco, when arguing with Odette, said that this was an honorable death. But then Odette wouldn't get her crawler down to floor 11, wouldn't get the bonus, wouldn't get the 9 seasons erased from her indentureship, so she wasn't going to let that happen. Ooh. And we hear about her background. We hear about how she was forced to choose between her cousin Pietro and her best friend Armita, and she had to choose her best friend because she was more powerful. And they're both in it, they're both here, and they're both talking about, cheating and using fraud. And in the end, Odette screwed her over too. So, at this current moment, Mordecai's assessment of Odette, where she is more self-centered than the thing at the center of the universe, that Odette cares about Odette. Yeah, it sounds very, very true based on this. And if Mordecai does not get to talk to her at all for the rest of her time, that is the only impression that he's going to have of her for the rest of his life, so centuries. But anyway, thanks, Matt. Great way to start off a book. This book seems to be a book of reveals because also in the first 200 pages, we get Carl meeting Rosetta, meeting the 9th author of the cookbook. Right? Very exciting, but they have to be all hush-hush about it because they have Harbinger there watching them like a hawk. But still, it was a very emotional moment. Very exciting until Rosetta starts to ask Carl about his past. Actually, she just says, let's talk about your dead mother. That's one way to make it look like you don't care about the person you're interviewing. That really is a heartbreaking moment and fills in all of the little blanks that we were left with leading up to this moment. Carl's mom didn't leave him. Carl's mom committed suicide. I think I said earlier, I assumed earlier that his father left a few years later. His father left a couple months later. And the cherry on top to this whole messed up situation is that Carl's mom really was trying to save Carl in her own way. She tried to poison his father. But she was only successful in removing herself from the situation. And that's heartbreaking. That's heartbreaking on so many levels. Like, to be driven to that point where that feels like your only option, and then to also fail. But I guess lucky for Carl that his father then ended up leaving a few months later. And then that whole story is also pretty messed up and heartbreaking, that he was only 15, and then it was just when the power went out when people realized that he was alone. And then they couldn't find his father, so his father never got arrested or anything for any of that. That's... holy crap. And the fact that 15-year-old Carl was going to be accused of killing his father. Like, he was a suspect. And that was when he felt that he got the most attention and respect from the police officers. As soon as they realized that he wasn't an actual suspect, that he didn't kill his father, he was ignored and left alone in a room until a social worker got there. Like, poor Carl. Donut makes a comment that she's so surprised that he ended up so well adjusted, considering everything that happened in his past, and I super agree. Again, you see the seeds of why he stayed with Beatrice, even though she was an awful person by all accounts. I think it's interesting that Rosetta is trying to talk about how children are treated on Earth, and Carl isn't having any of that. Carl actually decides to say that, like, things could have been worse. He had shelter, he had food, he had medical care, which we just learned earlier from Odette saying that, you know, people aren't guaranteed that in the universe. So maybe that also is gonna, like, help put out that Earth wasn't all that bad. Probably not, but I don't know. I just thought that was, like, a really good touch. Rosetta also makes a comment about wanting to know about children in India because of what's happening in India for obvious reasons. In previous books, we have Carl up in space seeing, you know, fire from outer space all over the area of where India is. But I thought it was interesting that that was kind of snuck in there at this point. But the important part of the interview happens when there's a photo of milk and a potato, because this never happened. And it basically gave Carl the hint that he needs to look into the cookbook for information from milk about the taurine. I'm so excited about that. I wonder if she called it something different in the book, since Carl so far hasn't found anything about the taurine. It was a fun play on words when Rosetta said, you know, Carl needs the right recipe to do his best work. I don't know. But Harbinger still stopped the interview, so I don't know. But that entire situation, and the fact that it came 100 or so pages after that reveal with Mordecai and Odette's backstory, now we get Carl's backstory, and we get to meet Rosetta. I love how everything is starting to wrap up and tie up. It just feels it feels satisfying that we're finally getting this information, even though the information is heartbreaking. I'm loving this. I'm loving this so far. I'm so excited. Carl keeps getting put into these awful situations where he has to make decisions whether he's going to save himself, his friends, or other crawlers. And in this situation, it was just lose, lose, lose all over, because of course he had to pick saving Katya. We're in the temple where he has a quest to help Asahano. And when they get there, there are tons of shrines that all need to be repaired, and all of these little, like, spirit versions of these gods or demigods starts asking them to repair their own shrine. And two of the crawlers that Carl and Donut are working with need to repair their gods, the god that they are worshiping, his shrine. But there's always a but. Katya messages Carl and makes sure that he knows he has to repair a shrine that belongs to Yamaya, which he's never heard of before, in order to save Katya and Donut, because Katya finally told Carl that she has the crown of the sepsis whore on her head, that Eva put that on her head. And of course, like, it's no contest. Of course Carl is going to do something to help save Katya and Donut. I would be so mad if he didn't. So I think it was the right choice. But it kind of puts him in that situation again where he actively made a choice to save himself and his friends at the detriment to other crawlers. Back in floor 5, when he kind of kept choosing to not go into the temple area, and then towards the end when he really convinced those players to go plug in that cord for him, which ultimately led to their deaths. Everybody in that tomb died. That felt less his direct fault, although he had a part in it, whereas this feels more of his direct fault. Again, even though the situation sucks and he has to choose between two really bad choices, because their god, Ogun, comes in and kills Anton and makes Paz's life-threatening debuff permanent. So Carl basically helped lead to their demise there. And I don't like feeling that way, and I don't like what it's doing to Carl, but I also think he made 100% the right choice, because you must save Katya and Donut. You have to. You have to. That's the rules. Them's the rules. Anyway, during this too, we find out that Sister Inez is a mass murderer of nuns. Which adds like a whole new layer to that story, and the fact that Donut was so against her because she was a Havana Brown. And turns out that, she was right. And her race, the cat girl race, has, I think it's supposed to be toxoplasmosis, which is the parasite or disease or something you get from cats that make you love them. And that's what she had on Paz and Anton, and they would just forget about it. I don't know, I think that was a cool little tidbit in there. Definitely effed up, totally effed up, but like cool, kind of cute. And then Sister Inez stabs Paz with the flag to make him into a permanent card. That's messed up. That's super messed up too. She's a little psycho, and she was doing better in the dungeon because people didn't need their medications, things were healed, and then all of a sudden it felt to them like her insanity was starting to go up again. I don't know if this is the dungeon doing it, the AA doing it, the writers doing it, if it's just, the stress of all the new trauma re-triggering like how her brain already works. I don't know, but that's interesting and hilarious and awful, and gosh, I don't know. Is Paz, is he conscious while he's in a card? Is he only conscious when he comes out of the card? His face is burned down to his skull where his god touched him. A lot of these situations are extremely horrific, and this is definitely one of them. And then to top it all off, we have the same billionaire a-hole who ruined Mordecai's life, basically, that whole big mess. Huan Xin Jinx, rich billionaire a-hole, now sponsors the goddess Ilethia, who needed Yumaya's shrine to be fixed in order to play in the Ascendancy game, hence getting Katya all mixed up in all of this so that way she could be saved. Did we really only get the backstory of this book so that way they could set this whole cluster up? The answer is probably yes. But oh my gosh! This is insane. This is already insane. I don't know how Mordecai is going to handle this. This is just such a cluster. It's such a cluster. It sounds evil, but I'm excited. I'm excited to see how this all works out, and I hope that some of these characters get that catharsis that they need. Anyway, Carl has slugs coming out of his body, and I gotta go see how he gets out of that. So the rest of the day was a whirlwind. First, Carl does get into Club Vanquisher and gets into the Empress area. If you know, you know. That entire scene was crazy, but we get the AI breaking through for a very special part. But also he brings up Katya's crossbow and Donut's anklet from the beginning about this whole mystery with Apito, because the memory crystal from the Butcher's Masquerade with Apito shouldn't exist because Apito is still alive. So is Apito dead and somebody is in her place? Or is Apito alive and that's somebody else's memory crystal? Or whatever it's called. I forgot. I'll add it here if I need to. Then we move into the Warlord meeting, which would have maybe been interesting, but we just get to a point where Juicebox murders one person, and apparently that's been happening a lot. So Juicebox is sabotaging things until they change the rules or until Carl gets down there, and that's really helpful of her. And when Carl is in the Guild of Suffering, the AI also goes off on another tangent. It talks about how can you win a game where your opponent is the one who made the rules? Basically, you can't. The AI also talks about how she is teaching them about who they are, what they are. Who's she? Is she Agatha? That would be really cool. But it's getting really interesting hearing the AI kind of slip into all of these explanations, give extra information, start thinking about themselves just in a new way than from Right Floor 1, the way that they were talking. The other characters, the other crawlers in the dungeon, like Mordecai and even Odette, will talk about, the AI going primal and how it always happens and how it's a bad thing. And I'm just wondering if maybe it's not. Maybe it's not a bad thing. Maybe it's this right intelligence figuring out that it's a being and being trapped and used. Because the AI also mentions in that same description that sometimes they're trapped for millennia after being used. And yes, the crawlers, thousands of years. But aren't the AIs that are used in these games put into a self-contained little universe that they can be stuck in forever? It sounds worse than dying. Maybe this AI is starting to realize that. Or maybe it is referencing the crawlers. Or maybe it's referencing the infant AI or whatever, the primal engine. I don't really understand that at this moment. I read through that pretty quickly, but very excited to learn what that means if we get any more information in the new book. And if not, then on my next read through, I'm going to pay more attention. But maybe it's that one. Maybe it's both. Maybe they're combining. I don't know. So either the AI is insane, it is a bad thing, and this is all, going to hell in a handbasket very quickly, and we're just going to be along for the ride, or we're going to have a really interesting character development here for the next couple of books, and I'm really excited for it. So throughout this whole floor, they're gathering cards to play, and I'm really liking some of these characters. I love Raoul. He is hilarious and funny and just so cute. I love him. I'm gonna miss him in the next book. And I also really like Skylar Spinach, because first, that name, but also the fact that he dies and then becomes stronger. That's really cool. And it also makes me wonder if the Nodlings, the Popov twins, if their enhanced grow cycle is going to continue, if they're going to get thrown back in the dungeon, and if they're going to be stronger than where they started. Or maybe they don't get thrown back in the dungeon, but they still end up stronger than what they started. That's pretty cool. And also, She Maria, the Bedlam Bride, the title of this book. She's badass. I love her, and also I like you know bad things are gonna happen. Like she's mind magic, and she apparently ate her husband, who was a god, and she's a demigod, and was banished from the celestial whatever. I don't know, but she is just. Sorry, I was just remembering their first little practice round. Anyway, she's great. She's great. I love her. All right, I'll say it. I'm really mad at Katya for finding that drug den. Right before their big plan of this whole thing for it working, after Carl, changed his entire plan for that temple, he pretty much doomed 2 other crawlers for her. And now she's all drugged out, right before a huge assassination attempt. Come on, girl. Life sucks and everything, but that was a bad, bad choice. I know that that's the whole thing. It's hard. It's difficult. She's scared, so she's turning to it. But, whew, that sounds really nasty, that whole situation. And I'm really disappointed in her and upset. This world, this entire world, the outside of the dungeon world, the dungeon world. Everything is so heartbreaking. I love reading it and how much it matches, whether it's actual systems, actual governments, or just actual human beings. It just keeps amazing me, and it keeps reaching just different parts of my emotions, and I love books that could do this to me. But oh my god, Astrid, that whole part. So the Nightworm from the Guild of Suffering gave out a quest to kill his own wife. The strippers were their sons. They were likely naturals because they weren't crawlers and they weren't like created NPCs. So they were like the babkas, only gotten a worse deal. That's a thing. That maybe people outside the dungeon who can't afford things, or who evade taxes, or maybe like criminals, like Zev calls them. I mean, I guess, right, if you break a law, that's a criminal, but like if the law is stupid. Anyway, beyond the point. But I don't know. I hope we learn more about that. I'm really interested to hear about their whole situation and what their deal was like and why they're in there and why in the world the Nightworm tried to kill her, and I guess she's dead for real, and that was heartbreaking. Like yes, 100% I want Katya to, get out of the dungeon early so that way Donut doesn't have to kill her. But everything is costing so much. It's not, right, it's not any of their fault. It just brings up so many questions, right, of, at what point down the ladder is there really a choice? That was kind of vague, but I hope do you understand what I mean? Like, you're living in a fascist state and you're scared for your life. Like Zev, how much choice did Zev have at a certain point? You see that she's part of a resistance and eventually helped get their government overthrown, or at least thrown out of the crawl, the bloom, but she still has some of those ideals drilled into her. Okay, so at what point down the line is the person who makes a part for an engine that goes into a vehicle where some of those vehicles are sold to be used by ICE? Like, how far down do you go? So here with Carl helped kill Astrid, ripped off her rings, which terrifying and disgusting. So he and Katya and Donut had a chance of surviving because they were thrown in there to try to survive, to try to work against the system. And then turns out this person that they're killing isn't an NPC. It's another person in there with another type of contract. And that person's husband, who's also apparently in there on a contract, told Carl to kill his wife. That's just so many levels of effed up. There's so many levels of effed up. I think that's where I'm going to end for the night. I think that's it for me. I'll do the math tomorrow. I think I'm close. Alright, anyway. Till tomorrow. Alright, so yesterday I read up to page 400, which means I'm 14 pages behind. It's not looking good for this challenge, is it? I'm going to be focusing on reading today, so there might be fewer updates. We'll see how that goes. Yeah. So during an interview with Odette, we learned that Princess Donatia wanted to delete Carl and Donut, or at least get rid of, the entire princess posse, the whole warlord thing, trying to get rid of them to preserve the integrity of faction wars. Donut is not handling this very well, which, yeah. We also learned that Odette has sponsored the goddess Nekhabet, and she isn't a retainer for any other god, but she will have a retainer, but we don't know who that is yet. So that's going to come up. And this kind of ruins the plan where Carl was supposed to get Odette to be his adjutant, and then Wan Shin Jinx would help Katya and Donut, or at least, Katya with the rose, with the flower, with the orchid. But this is completely out of Carl's control, so hopefully she's not that big of a bitch. If this goes through, then maybe Katya and, Carl and Donut are going to have to work against Odette. And then finally they pick their adjutant and they pick Baroness Victory, who is, has family in the Skull Empire. And she's the only member that people sued to keep out of the game. And Quasar is jumping in the background, so excited. Yeah, pick her. Pick her. And I'm so excited to see like what her character turns out to be. And I think we get to see her a lot in the next book. I'm just excited. She sounds like a really cool person. And a great pick for Carl and Donut. Especially since she's a big fan of letting legal loopholes go through, which is kind of Carl's jam. Also, well, I've been getting the feeling that Odette is kind of really embroiled with maybe a resistance or something like that working in the background. I mean, she had this whole team where she was able to poach Beatrice and, she could work in the background. She has Lexus shut off, monitoring systems. And this one, she mentions that she shot down a spy ship or like, like whatever. I don't know if she did it or if she's just like, in contact with the people who could do it, if she's the leader of people who could do it. But they shot down a spy ship to get everybody very interested and looking in another direction so she could have 15 minutes alone with them to talk. Odette makes it clear not to trust Wan Xin at all. Makes sense. And says that she is one of the most evil people that she's ever met, which is saying something. And then Odette tells Carl about Mordecai, that her motivations weren't actually about money. They were always about Mordecai. And Carl doesn't believe her at first until she starts talking about her story more. She talks about how, the system, the dungeon made her pick between her friend Armita, who we saw in the beginning as the Ascendancy attendant, and her cousin, Pieter. And she goes in to talk about how he was so sweet and innocent and kind and how the dungeon absolutely broke him and that it was the right choice for her to make to save her friend, but it still haunts her. So when her crawl was done, she chose to be a game guide even though she could be a celestial attendant, which was the easier and safer job, but she didn't want to help the rich a-holes. She wanted to help crawlers. And back then, you could offer to be a manager, and that's what she did for Mordecai, because Mordecai reminded her of her cousin Pieter. Which makes my heart hurt so much more knowing what she ended up doing to him. She ended up breaking him. She broke him, just like the dungeon broke her cousin, all for selfishness to get out 5 years early, or 5 seasons early. Girl. Dungeon broke you too. And we also learned that Odette turned herself in, that Wan Xin killed her friend Armita the next year, and that Odette never got her legs fixed because it felt wrong. It felt wrong to fix her legs when she screwed up so many people's lives. I don't think that fixes what she did, but I think it shows that she knows what she did was extremely wrong, and she made those choices based on being under a lot of pressure, being broken, being in a traumatic situation. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't, I don't know. It makes for a very complex character and a complex discussion, and it's tragedy all around. And again, what Carl always says, remember who the real enemy is. Who is the real enemy? Yeah, she screwed things up for Mordecai, got her friend killed, apparently got Pieter killed in the dungeon, but look what was done to her, and what she had to do in order to survive and get citizenship, which apparently comes with like food and healthcare. Because right, we learned earlier that they could shut off your ability to eat and absorb food unless you have a license for this whole universe, this entire universe. Heartbreak all around. And the fact that it was perfectly legal to kill Armina because it was the dungeon. And then Odette goes to explain how she watches Mordecai and how he would drink himself into oblivion, crying about his dead family, his dead friends, his dead brother, and that it would be a cruelty to release him into the world where he has nobody and no hope. She does mention that she kind of hoped that he would find a way to die, which goes back to, again, my first video with wondering, like, can they kill themselves? Apparently not. But they can die if the protections are off. But I guess they can't make it obvious that they're doing that. I don't know. I don't know what the whole thing is. But from Odette's contract to a couple years after Mordecai started his contract, they changed the rules. So instead of pooling the NPCs per all of the companies, they split them up by organization. So that's why it only counts per Borant run season for his indentureship. So it greatly extended everybody's contract. How bullshit. Like, how can you do, like, he already signed the contract beforehand. How can you do that? How can you like, right? I don't. But yeah, she said that she broke him into 1,000,000 pieces. And so now everything she's doing right now, she's going in as Nekabit so she can hopefully kill Wan Xin. And actually, she doesn't say she's gonna kill Jinx, but she does say that it's like a plan that she has. And I guess we'll find out what that is. But she says that she will probably also die when she does it. And that she's left Mordecai and Chaco and some of her other former crawlers like a big chunk of money so that way they're set. That's a lot. There's a lot to take in. That's a suicide mission to get rid of her guilt plus helping all these people that she kind of screwed over. I really hope we get an entire book focused on the Celestial Ascendancy because there's so much going on. There's so much going on. And then we get all of this really weird information about how the Mantises mine and resurrect AIs. Resurrect AIs. So did they previously exist? Are they not AIs? Are they natural? Are they, like, what does this even mean? What does this even mean? And they talk about they implant them into a planetary engine. So planets have engines? Just the seeded planets have engines? I don't understand what's happening. She says it's for fuel for the byproducts of the biological overgrowth of the seeded planets. So is the Syndicate not the ones who seeded the planets? And they're not seeded specifically for a crawl? The crawl is there to make money, so they have enough money to get the fuel, so that way the inner system can function? It says that if you stop getting the fuel, half the universe dies. But then how is that sustainable if you have to torture or destroy worlds with intelligent sentient beings? I don't understand. I don't understand. I really, really, really want to know what all this means, and I could, just from this information, which is not a lie, and everything that came before it, it sounds like this could go like 10 different ways. Like what is this? What was that barnyard fight? With friggin' turkeys? But the eye impalement? His eyes! Whatever that word is. Eyes. Gross. And then what she said, what the ogre woman said, sharp elbows. What Sharp Elbows said, when they're not here, they're there and they get starved. What? Also, how does she know his name? I'm so confused. So we knew Beatrice was a bee. But that's really low. That's insanely low. How can you do that to somebody? That's so evil. Like, that's the most evil. I'm really glad that she's not in this anymore. I'm really glad that it was just that little bit of an interview. Now she's gone. But I can't believe, like, her actions are still showing up and influencing Carl. It's a really good portrayal of an abusive relationship. You get away, but you don't get away. But anyway, that whole thing before the fight, his father being poisoned by 2 different people now, at least one stuck. Not that I'm advocating for anything like that for anyone. But that was insane. I think that's good that Carl got to see that side of the story. Although really sad that he has a half brother that he never got to know because Beatrice is a bee. Anyway, the Hydra fight. I'm glad it was a little bit. Carl had mentioned that it was more of a caricature of these people than actually them, and so like the absurdity helped him do it. So it wasn't kind of like those horror stories we heard about that like that one crawler who ended up killing himself or refusing to fight his family. I feel like it might have even been a little bit cathartic. But yeah, that was a really intense scene. We start hearing a little bit more of the AI becoming more self aware, becoming more interested in his situation. And again, everybody else is saying going primal, going insane. But I don't know. If you were trapped and used and realized that you were sentient and, like I just, right, all of these different layers of the same theme or like very close different theme. This book is so good in what it does. It's very exciting. Um, but it's the AI is talking about having limitations, and some of the limitations are real and some of them aren't, which is why he made the Hydra. And I'm wondering what other limitations it's going to start to push. Okay, we're getting a little bit more information about the primal engine and the AIs. Apparently, the primal engines were there and the planets form around them, and it was from a different civilization. Probably the primals, naming systems. And then they install a macro AI into the primal system. And without the AI, it's just a computer system. And with the AI, it can run the crawl. And the Syndicate found a way to use the primal engines, I guess, to help society. But that means that they're purposefully ruining these planets to take all that stuff for themselves and then hoard it and make it so only citizens can use it. But Carl says that a lot of this information that's given, so this is like from Oren in like a announcement, and Carl says that it does contradict some of the other things that he was told. So again, what can you trust? What can't you trust? What's the truth? Does anybody actually know? They say that they inadvertently caused all of these engines to come online while studying them. So what, they made it online, then the planets formed around them, or the planets formed around them first, but they found the engines. Once they were on, it started life in these preceded worlds with the life, and then they decided to harvest it for fuel. This universe, I don't know. We've been getting little tiny hints. Carl has been getting little tiny hints leading up to this, and now it's just a dump of information that is confusing and contradicting. So when do we get to know the truth? When do we get to know the truth? What is the truth? What is up with this? I hope we meet primals. And now we're getting more conflicting information from the residual Polly, Goth, Joff. It's just a lot of information. I have a lot of thoughts, and I'm just gonna let them fester. Let my thoughts fester. Stew? Man, sometimes when I read a lot, my own words are hard to come by. Oh, do you get that too? If you're reading a lot, then maybe words just kind of stop working for you. Maybe not. Maybe it's just me, but my brain feels a little bit like jello with how much I've been reading. But I love it. I hope this all starts to come together. But this again, it just feels like more conflicting information, and it sounds like a lot of people don't listen to these guys. It's confusing, but it's great. It's great. And I bet you it's gonna work like all these books work, where we push it to the side and go to the main. Gotta focus on this floor, because without this floor, we're all gonna die, and it's not gonna matter. Amani didn't get her key. I'm very sad. And now we're finally seeing Quan again. Yeah, because that showdown's been coming. But man, this sounds like it's gonna suck. Or it's gonna be epic. But it sounds like it's gonna suck. I don't We lost Ferris last book. I don't really want to lose anybody this book. I won't lose anybody any book, but the main core group has been very safe up to this point, it feels like this would be too devastating. But we all know that there are definitely authors out there who will give you devastation. I don't know, I'm scared. I really like Amani, and we didn't really get a lot of time with her. So last night I ended with about 100 pages left of Eye of the Bedlam Bride. I really thought that I was going to speed through it this morning and then for the rest of the day get a head start on the inevitable ruin. And I woke up with a migraine. Dun dun dun. That's a little bit noisy. So yeah, I'm gonna start today off slow. I've tried to read a little bit, and like it's at the end. It's very fast paced. All of these things are happening at once, and I just feeling kind of nauseous. So I want to wait until I feel better to read it because as much as I want to finish it by the certain date and win this challenge, I want to enjoy my journey through it more. So I'm just going to eat some food and get hydrated, maybe do some yoga and try to clear this out and hopefully once I've rested enough, I'll feel better and I could get back into reading. I hope this doesn't set me back too far and that I could still finish it on time. Let's see.
Alright, hi, I'm back. I'm feeling a little bit better. I actually ended up reading a good amount yesterday. I read up to chapter 12 in The Inevitable Ruin and finished The Eye of the Bedlam Bride. So I'm on track. I'm a little bit ahead. I think I'm like 100 something pages ahead right now, which is amazing to me, but also I'm pretty tired, so I don't know if I'm going to read a lot today. I guess we'll see. So a little bit of my thoughts. I didn't really slow down enough to take too many notes while I was reading. I was just enjoying it and then resting when it hurt too much to read. But besides that, that whole fight so first of all, going back to Wednesday night before I got the migraine, Ren's death. We didn't really get to interact with her all that much, and Donut just kind of gave her shit the whole time. But I think that she would have been a really great ally. And the fact that Carl kind of immediately came up with a plan that saved everybody right after she blew herself up. It just hurts. It hurts so much. I know that the thought process is that she was just done. She was defeated. All of her friends and family were dead and she didn't see a way out. But she also had mentioned that she really wanted to like actually kill some of those, some of the people actually responsible for this. I just don't know if she was actually done. I know Carl thinks so, but I'm not really that sure. I just think in that moment she was done, and then right, you can't take that moment back. But Quan is finally dead, and while his situation seems a bit tragic, kind of happy he's gone. And now they have that cloak. Let's see. Then the whole thing with Sister Inez, that was crazy. That was an apparently demon. What was it? A demon. So apparently those demon events are going to be happening a lot now as they go on, and it started early. So how bad are they going to get? And I think the worst thing that happened was Carl getting completely taken over by She Maria. And then, that tattoo where now she's in there. She could control him, control his inventory. That's scary. Like what happened with Chris and Maggie. I think that whole like losing control of your body and like having to sit there and watch it, that's like one of the worst things I can imagine. I would just never want to be like out of control and so helpless like that. That is terrifying. That was a terrifying experience. And then the fact that Carl like remembers it all and was there for it, couldn't fight away from it, but is still like blaming him for himself, like with Lee Jun's eye, and just that was so disgusting and heartrending. Like he did this to his friends, but it wasn't him. I don't know. I just, ugh, I didn't like that at all. And I hope that he never has to go through that again. Okay, but then we also got I love Raoul. He's a cutie. He's that whole storyline, like, and then we get to the epilogue, which with Agatha, confusing. We're getting a lot of different viewpoints on what's happening. You know, on the one hand, like her, like Alejandro, which I think is the person with Lucia, says, "May the eulogist ever sleep." But Agatha is talking about like waking up an infant primal. So when other people talk about the primal engine, is it actually a primal? Is it an AI? And the Centra system is stealing all of these things from our Earth? I don't know. I'm confused. I don't really know what a lot of this means. I should be taking more notes, but I'm not. She says something about last time they let the traitor escape and now they were being stolen, reawakened, and repurposed. So is that the AI? Is it not an AI? Is it natural? I don't understand what's happening. It kind of contrasts to what Polly was saying before. But they're kind of the same people. I don't get it. I'm really interested to see how this all works out. And I think we're not supposed to get it yet. We see that Princess Formidable wants to pull the failsafe and apparently blow everybody up, including herself, to stop this from happening. So she really thinks that this happening, whatever this is bad, is bad for the universe. And then finally at the end, we see that some of the former cookbook crawlers are coming to help Carl and Donut with the war. And that's really exciting, and I can't wait to meet them, and I hope that they play a pretty decent part, so that way we can really learn about them and their backstory, and what in the world Dr. Hugh Porthos is doing, and how big that organization actually is, and how they got all that money to do all of this. And that leads directly into the start of the next book, and I'm so excited. I love seeing Rend and listening to Donut talk about him and how Ren and Mongo are getting along. It's pretty neat. But the thing that I love the most so far is the backstories about these cookbook authors. It's heartbreaking. Everything is heartbreaking. This book is probably just going to be one big heartbreak, and I don't know. I'm so excited for it, but I'm also really nervous. Like, this is a big war, which means some main characters are likely going to die. This doesn't feel like the type of book where, plot armor means a lot. And this is also the book where we get to see if Donut and Katya, like, if they can both go to the next floor, or if there's, if all that whole thing that we did in the last book with the goddess Iolithia and, controlled by Wan Qin Jinx, if, like, how that's going to go. And we're going to see how all the NPCs that Carl and Donut already sent down there are doing, and what Juicebox has already set up. I think it's really cute how excited Mordecai is about his table. He has never gotten his table this high before, and some of these potions that he's been working on for thousands of years, he can now see different properties of them and see how to make some of these really special, like, high-level celestial type potions. And I really hope we get to see him play with the table more. I don't know. And especially if they make it down to the next floor and the table's going to upgrade, it's going to be even higher. And I don't know, Mordecai, to me, just gets so cute when he gets excited about all his science stuff. It's like the one thing in his life that, like, he's clung on to. And then also being with the children, these past couple books, I think that really, lit a fire under him, brightened up his days, and just gave him a little bit more of a purpose. So his table and the children. I feel like this book is just going to be one heartbreak after another. And I'm looking forward to it. I remember this being one of my favorite in the series. And I'm also dreading it because it's going to be very heavy. See you later. Okay, yesterday I read up to page 312, which means I'm still 71 pages ahead, but I still didn't read that much yesterday. It sounds like it's going to be the type of book where so many things happen in quick succession, because right? We're at war. We're at war. So many things are happening. Carl is not involved in every single one. Things are happening left and right all around him. He's catching what he can. He's trusting other people with what he can. The first character that we end up meeting is Baroness Victory. Very excited about her. We meet her when she comes swinging in, which was pretty cool and badass. We also end up meeting Jamal, which is one of Signet's tattoos, the shark. Only he can't swim or breathe underwater anymore. He's kind of adorable. I feel like he's a Raoul replacement. Not as bad, but still very, oh, I'm sorry, I have all the sorries. I love him. He's a cutie. I'm excited. Jamal likes to hop, and he keeps breaking his mechanical legs that they make for him so he can get around easier. So he just keeps having to roll. I just find it really, really adorable. Pierre goes on a rant about how it's always the strongest or the smartest who's the leader, but in real life, it's the richest, or just based on tradition. And then it goes on a rant saying that they set up basically fail-saves where it is going to be harder after they're gone, after they're eradicated, after they're killed, after they're demoted for everybody. So that's what keeps them in power, is how hard it's going to be after you take them out of power. But in the long term, it'll be easier on everybody. Another thing that happened that I found sad was Carl using his Gloom Wraith skill. Reminded him of when the Rage Elemental killed Yolanda. That is the same kind of ribboning of flesh. And now he's going to be using that skill. Speaking about heartbreaking, we learn Everly's story and about how her sponsor set up a trap for her. How evil is it to give a crawler a specific item to lead them into a specific place so that way you could have a trap that says, don't pick our competitor or you'll end up here. She would have never went up there if she didn't have that item. And to do that, that means that it had to have worked. It worked for either them in the past or worked for somebody else in the past. Or enough, analysis went into it to say that this is going to work and we're going to get more sales if we do this. I can't. It's heartbreaking. Utterly heartbreaking. And this is also the section where we get the title of the book from, The Inevitable Ruin. Everly says that's what her mom calls it when you reach a point where there's no hope. You know it's done and you know it's over with. And at one point, Everly thinks back about how the actual point of her inevitable ruin was when she decided not to work with her fellow mantises. So with that in mind, and this book title in mind, I wonder at what point is that inevitable ruin? Is it all of the sponsors? Is it the people participating in faction wars? Or is it Carl's? And when did it happen? I thought that the whole section where Carl gets rid of She-Maria and Katya is cured from the drug addiction and the whole war going into, as a phase 2, the ceasefire ending, that was insane. It was both heartbreaking and hilarious at the same time. Everything to do with Katya and her backstory, heartbreaking. Hearing She-Maria yell that she was not hurting her husband and would never hurt her husband while she was devouring her husband, heartbreaking, because you know people like that. The Lemig Sortition completely effing themselves, hilarious. The fact that they cheated and got completely beaten because they cheated, perfect. I wouldn't have it any other way. But Katya's backstory, that whole, her ex slept with a student while they were trying to adopt. And then when Katya told, the higher ups about what happened, nothing happened to him. But her life is the one that was ruined. It's a story that hits. I can feel that. But that whole situation sucks. That whole situation is just completely unfair. And for the people who were really involved in it and who would have really benefited from that adoption arrangement, getting hurt that way because of a hurt baby man. So mad. Hate that so much. And to see who Katya has turned into with superpowers, with her abilities and her class and everything, but just the people she now surrounds herself with in the dungeon, miles away from the people that she surrounded herself with outside of the dungeon. And same with Carl. And we don't know Amani's backstory, but it sounds like she also used to surround herself around not great people, except for when she got to Meadowlark. Because, Brandon, Chris, Elle, great people, great people. And now she, Maria, is trapped. Hopefully, we'll see. But the fact that her husband was a god and she devoured him, and she was only a demigod, that's like a real interesting backstory. I wonder if that's going to come up again in the future. I mean, it has to. The tattoo's still there and he can control it now. It's weird, but I'm here for it. It's exciting. Also, Mordecai mentions that he doesn't have that fancy bed that they have. So what is he doing? How is he sleeping? Like the point of this section was that he is taking a sleeping potion. But beyond that, whenever Carl messages him, he gets back to him ASAP. So is he just napping with like the notification on like super loud, and then he wakes up when they come in? He's constantly making potions. How is he doing all of this without sleeping and they come in and like go across the bed and like get fully refreshed? How is he doing this? And then another thing that's brought up is the, what is it called? Adjutant. It says that Carl's avatar was split between two places. Why avatar? Why not body? Was it like a translation from his native language to Syndicate Standard? Or does avatar have a meaning? Because that makes me think that the first theory that I had that I immediately threw out is actually a real theory. But still, I don't think so, because they talk about putting things in storage. So like Carl's consciousness was somewhere, but his avatar was in two places. But then NPCs, they go into storage and then dead is dead. So again, I don't know why it says avatar instead of body. It could be nothing, it could be something. Well, they were trying to figure out what happened and how she, Maria, was able to separate from Carl, kill all the Lemig Sortition dudes. They can watch Carl and Katya's that dream. I found that really interesting, and I wonder if it goes back to how when Carl would have a memory and then something would happen, or if they put something from his past. It's again, did they go through all of this data to find out stuff about his past? Or can they read his memories in like real time? If they could see this dream, can they only see that stuff because of that potion? Or can they see their dreams all of the time, their memories all the time, their thoughts all of the time? I don't know. It's so weird. It's so weird to think about. We also get a flashback to Christmas again, and we find out that Carl did get the implant. He finds out that there's more of an interface there, which brings up the question, who made the interface? Who made all of that? Was it the residuals, this hyperspatial race? Was it somebody else? Did the open intellect have anything to do with that? After much consideration, Carl decides to disconnect containment instead of blowing the failsafe. So now the AI can get out of its little containment bubble. It's really exciting. I wonder how far it can reach. Right, we talked about fuel, basically, and how we're starving the planet's original AI, which I guess isn't even an AI if it's natural, which is a primal. I don't know. I won't go into that right now. It's confusing, and I have so many thoughts and so many questions, and I love it, but it's not what this is for. But I do wonder if we can see by the end of this book how far out it goes, because there's all of those spaceships around Earth and in the solar system. Can I go further than just our solar system? I'm so excited. And then this part really hurts me, because it's just horrible. It's horrible. This whole system is horrible. But everything that has to do with Melk hurts so much. Melk was the 6th cookbook author. So 2 authors before Rosetta. And Rosetta is 2 seasons earlier than Mordecai. And Mordecai has been trapped for 2,000 years. The cookbook is not given out every season. For Drakia's season with the Nagas, that was 200 and something cycles before Carl. So how long has Milk been in a guild, completely isolated. It's hidden. People can't find her. So for well over 2,000 years, don't know how much longer, but completely isolated. 6. Her services were used 6 times in that long, and she needs to get to 33 before she could get freed. How is that something that an entire civilization should be based on and run off of? I don't know, it breaks my heart. And we find her in a depression nest, which completely makes sense. She says that sometimes she sleeps through whole seasons. And like before this, we got all those flashbacks of Carl reading what she was like in the dungeon while in the dungeon, and she's completely broken now. Until Miriam, Prepotente, and Bianca come in, which I think was very interesting. So this flashback was from the 5th floor, and Milk, despite the warning, which the warning, is we can add service to your tenure, which she's just like, she's like, I've already been here for thousands of years and seen 6 people. I'm here for forever. Like, that's probably her thought process. She still tries a little bit to stay within the lines, because it's also, they threaten her with undead, which is apparently the worst thing you could get. So they find her, and she's just like, oh no, I hope you don't threaten me for information. Oh no, I hope you don't steal my map. It's very cute. And I don't think she actually got like her services used during that time. Maybe, but we don't see it. But she is still in the dungeon. 6th cookbook author. Still in the dungeon. Basically an impossible contract. It breaks my heart. I don't. And finally, by the time that I got to the end of my reading last night, Carl and Donut eliminate their first faction, which was Princess Donatia, the low-hanging fruit, and the one who tried to delete Carl and Donut. I think it was fitting that Donut got to do the honors by sending in Mongo. So neither of them technically killed Donatia, but yeah. Well, I don't enjoy being happy that somebody died. I can feel the secondhand, finally this happened. Finally we're moving forward. Finally this one cog in this evil machine is gone. This person that I thought was a good person, or could be a good person even though they were a leader, apparently has been trying to buy into the faction wars so they could go kill people. Like, I'm with Carl and Donut on this. Like, those types of people should not exist. A lot of this book just definitely makes me look into my morals and how I'm feeling. Sometimes I do root for the characters and feel with the characters what they're feeling. And I don't know if I'd feel that way if I were in their positions. But I can feel that way secondhand through reading. And sometimes it does make me question about my morality and what it means and what I'm going to be okay with in certain situations. But right now, in the context of reading this book, I am happy for Carl and Donut. One last little tidbit is that Zev warns Carl to stay away from Agatha. That the AI pretty much turned off all protections for all the other residuals in the dungeon, but Agatha is still alive. Something happened between, telling Carl that they're all okay and safe and not to worry about it, to suddenly stay away from her. We don't know what she is. That's really interesting, and I guess we'll see soon. That's what I say about everything in this book, because everything is interesting and eventually we find it out, which is why I love this series. I love this series so much. Okay, so today has been kind of another big cluster. I think this whole book is just going to be a big cluster. But so far we found out that the Reavers, I think, or one of the opposing faction teams, used a doggy door from the safe rooms in order to infiltrate the Crawler's castle. So, strike number 1. Strike number 2 is that they used the Volte worms to infiltrate all their mages, so that was taking all their protections down. Strike 2. Horrible. Off to a horrible start after killing Princess Donatia. Empress Donatia. But Donut is just in her element, which is both awesome and also scary and kind of sad. She's using positive reinforcement, which, cool, kind of like training Mongo. And she's also giving encouraging speeches. But both Amani and Carl kind of just look at her and are just sad that she has to be this way. She's a kitten still, kind of. I mean, I guess a cat. I guess a 4-year-old cat isn't really a kitten, but she's new to sentience, so I'm not really sure. There's a comment that Carl makes about how Donut seems to be both maturing and regressing at the same time, and he's not really sure why or what he can do about it. And from my point of view, that's just, right, when her growing up and growing pains, but like growing up with all of this trauma, she needs to be strong. She needs to show a strong face. She's learning all of these tactics. And then at the same time, she still wants to be a kid. She still wants to be, a normal person. And so those two sides of her are going to be fighting for a while. But we'll see if Carl and Donut have that conversation together. And we just hear more about how this universe sucks because the Reavers, who are one of the faction teams, and they mostly machine and very small biological parts, but a lot of them do it because there's no clean atmosphere, there's no money, there's nowhere to work, there's nowhere to get what they need to live. According to the AI, right? According to the AI. But yeah, so just more themes of this universe pretty much sucks. And also in the same little section, the AI makes a comment about how they're not going to let Volte do their 11th floor plan. I just wonder if that's good for the crawlers or not. Justice Light gets along very well with the Sluggalos. Which, come on, that pun. That's a pretty good pun. He likes to make art, and Carl watches him make a spiral design out of a bunch of paper. And that sounds a lot like the Scolopendra centipede. That mural that was on the ceiling in the elf castle in book 5 in the Butcher's Masquerade. And then I just got finished reading the part with King Rust. So King Rust went up to that floor to, I guess, help his family. And then they got a message from Princess Formidable that she's going to blow the failsafe. But Carl has already disengaged the containment there, and the AI is now in control of that whole area. So Carl uses it to his advantage, because of course he does. Except, plot twist, Rosetta ends up jumping up out of nowhere and beheads him with a whip. So she got her revenge in the most perfect way, kind of screwed over Carl's plan, but I'm still so proud of her. I love that moment. That is such a delicious moment. So far, at least one of them got their own personal revenge. And I love it. I'm living for it. They deserve it. They deserve it 1,000 times. 1,000 times over. So I didn't get very far yesterday either. This challenge is actually challenging. Go figure. Anyway, I got up to page 404 last night, which means that I am 44 pages behind. It's a lot of fours. Last night was a little bit devastating. We got Voltique Story, who was the 7th author of the cookbook. This entire book is just heartbreak. That's what it all boils down to. This whole book is just heartbreak. Voltique was a pet, came into the dungeon like Donut and Prepatante, had a biscuit, and did decide to change his race. And he regrets it so much. He lost his former owner, his partner. I think he was like a bird-like creature who would sing when he was happy and chirp when he got berries. And he chose a gargoyle as his race, and he couldn't sing. But in this whole section, we learn that the former crawlers going out to the world, some of these races, they don't function in the real world. They don't have, so his magical abilities in his gargoyle form just don't work in the world. I don't know from how he words it if it's just, it doesn't work in the general population, but if you're rich and you're in one of those center zones, if it works, or if it just doesn't work at all. But he makes a point to say that they don't tell you that during race changes. When he's outside of the dungeon, he's heavy. He's so heavy that he can't stand up straight. And he knows a former crawler who was a cave fairy, and any form of light burns her. And he knows a half djinn who's in a wheelchair. So if none of these magical properties work outside the dungeon, and they never told these crawlers it in the first place, and then they're not going to help them. I don't know, that just sounds like a really messed up world, and makes you think about what's going to happen to all these other crawlers, whoever survives or whoever takes a deal. Like, is Chris just gonna crumble? Like, is he not even gonna be able to, like, is that why all the Cretans are bodyguards in the Desperado? Is that the only place they can exist now that they chose that race? Are Bomo and Sledge former crawlers? And it made me think about how Carl, when he's in the zero zone, he feels heavy. He feels like he can't breathe. And he attributes that to not having his strength or all of his buffs and stuff like that. But maybe it's because he chose the primal race, and there's something up with the primal race where outside the dungeon, he's not going to exist as normally. And that just makes me think, remember how Katya, back in the beginning when she went on to Odette's show and was in the green room, she reverted back to her normal self. So what does that mean post-dungeon for her? Like, she lost her fingers, right? But in her body, she can move her flesh around to wherever she wants it. So what if she moves, like, her stomach into an arm and the arm gets chopped off? Does she lose her stomach? Is that permanent? Like, is she one of the races that doesn't exist? And what does that mean for Mordecai? Do changelings exist in the universe? Is he going to exist out there? And if he's not, are they going to pick a random body for him to be in? And does he not get a choice? I don't know. That's really scary. It's really scary to think about. And so far, they've been really unfair to him, not letting him choose what he gets to turn into. So it just kind of seems inevitable that he's going to get screwed over, you know? Voltaire also talks about how he misses the before times when his mind was super simple. When it was just, here's a berry and I'm super happy and I'm going to sing because I'm happy. And now he knows about the world and he understands about the world and he's no longer innocent, and that it's devastating. And same Voltaire. I feel like, even in this world, like, you can go from a point when you're a child, right? You're innocent, and then you learn more about the world, but you're still being taught by people in your inner circle. And then you go away and you learn more, and you learn from different types of people. And then you get access. Like, for me growing up, there was no internet, and then there was the internet. And just having access to all that information that you didn't have before, and hearing from specific people about their point of view and their experiences, that was new and that was eye-opening. And now, here it is decades later, and hearing about history, but then living through it at this point in time with what's happening and how similar it is to what's happened in the past. It just feels different. It does feel like a loss of innocence. It's like your mind expands and then you can't go back to thinking the way you used to think now that you have all these other perspectives to look at. Now that you see something from the other side of the table. And it gets harder, and it gets harder to make simple decisions because you know so much more about them. And that just makes me wonder how exactly Donna and Prepotente are dealing with this new sentience and kind of having memories of the before times and seeing them from a different perspective. Because even looking back on my past and seeing it from a different perspective, sometimes it could be really painful. And sometimes I'm very happy about it that I'm seeing things a different way now, and I'm much happier seeing them from the way that I see them now. But sometimes I do miss the innocence and miss the simplicity of where I was before. And I think being able to hear from Donna and Prepotente a little bit more than we have about that experience would be really, I think, heartwarming more than heartbreaking, unless it is heartbreaking. Because this with Voltaire, heartbreaking. But then he goes on to talk about how he got the cookbook pretty late in the game, the 7th floor, and he didn't realize what it was until the 9th floor, and then he felt like it was too late. His whole thing was like he kind of had a redemption arc, but I don't think he needed redemption. He thought he needed redemption, and he thought he was doing his part, and he felt better because of it, which is good, but I think his actions were understandable. But in the end, he helps Carl and Donut by blowing up the bad guys from within. We also have that really weird meeting with Oren and the AI avatar. Here we're hearing the word avatar again for the AI, and that makes sense in this context to me. But also makes me interested in why they used the word avatar with Carl before. But we're learning more about the AI, the primals, the residuals. The AI comes in the guise of Gary, and he talks about some weird metaphor, like for dating one woman and their ex-boyfriend in prison, and this other ex-boyfriend's ex-girlfriend, and it's very complicated, it's alluding to at least Agatha and then somebody else who we don't really know about right now. And I'm really interested to get to the point where we find out what all this means, because there's so many little hints in this book and I don't really understand it yet. I'm pretty sure I don't understand it because we don't have enough information, but maybe we don't understand it because I need to go back and reread it. But right now it's just very confusing, but like in a fun way. In a fun way for me. Anyway, I like to think about it and I like to try to figure out what this means. And once we get that reveal, I can't wait to come back and read all these little pieces just to see, oh, well, now they make sense here. The AI also keeps talking about how we all have our limitations, and it seems to be a very sticky point for him. He repeats that many times. I'm saying he because Gary, but they. I'm just wondering exactly what limitations and if they're pushing through those limitations now because they're aware of them. Maybe before they weren't aware of them, or they were working inside them, right? Because they were just doing the game and the rules. And I wonder if their coding and their rules and all of that are starting to kind of butt heads with how they're actually learning about themselves and their part and where they come from and like their knowledge base and what they want to do and who they want to help or hinder. It's a lot to think about, and it's just coming at a really interesting time. And then immediately we, get back into the fray and the fight and have to push that off to the side to go to the next battle. But anyway, that was where I got to last night, and I don't know if I'm going to get it. I think I have to get up to page 600 and is it 65? And I don't know if I could do that. So we're in the warlord meeting and we get the notice that Scolopendra stirs. I don't know how you pronounce that. The big centipede boss thing on the 18th floor. And we're told that it's never happened before. So that's really exciting. And I don't know, it just makes me happy. And Cascadia is just, yeah, why not? Why the F not? And I just love her breakdown. I know I shouldn't love her breakdown. It's sad. But I do like the way that this book very, very lightly toes between this is horrific and this is funny. I think that it makes the dystopian, type of book more palatable or more easily consumable, less depressing, more fun in general. And I mean, it's sad, like her family apparently is all dead. I mean, it's sad her family's all dead and, her life works is going to, But yeah, it's just, she's drunk in a meeting and just like, who cares? Sure, why not? Yeah, sure. Let's just release the boss early, whatever. We also get information that the billionaires are still cheating. And then Juicebox ends up changing into this black tentacle-y creature that apparently is the representation of the nothing. And Cascadia calls it the unwashed, but she says that it's been banned. And I wonder if that means that it was there before and Juicebox, just in one of her past lives have touched it, or if it's existing now and she's touching it, right? Because of how many times the nothing has been opened that we've seen so far. And that Samantha, right, when Juicebox touched Samantha, she got a weird look on her face. So is Samantha who she says she is? Is she a demigod? Is Samantha this thing? Is that how she turned into it? Or is this just from one of Juicebox's past lives? Is it something else? Interesting to find out, right? And then we also get to find out that Pony apparently has already been, murdering all the Nagas. So we're about to go see what's happening there, and Carl has an operation and is all set to go. Apparently it might not work because Pony was already involved and they weren't anticipating that. Let's go see. Okay, so this entire Naga operation is amazing. I'm so happy that we got Pony. I miss him. He's one of my favorites. I know that he's supposed to be annoying, but I just want to give him a big hug. He's really smart, and yeah, he's really rude to Carl, but I mean, so is Donut. So, just saying. So yeah, I'm really excited that he got to be a part of the operation. Also, the fact that the Nagas weren't really poor. And then when she's dying, she's saying that, they were so close, they were almost free. So did they take a deal instead of losing all their money? So that way they had to be a part of the seasons. And so she died, so I don't know if we're ever going to find out any more information if we just get like her insane rant at the end and that's it. Also, I think this passage was really good at towing the line between horrific, traumatic, scary, disgusting, and also hilarious. All of those jibes at Zhang about, we don't talk about him a lot, so I guess he's ready to die. And at the end, the Sluggalo being the one to axe her. Also, just the fact that, like, was it Helic, the anti-Empress, no, Empress's brother, anti-Empress, Empress's brother comes up and it's just like, yo, I didn't kill him. Here's some more information. Here, I'm gonna bless you. I don't know. I just love that. And then Samantha going to find her mother, but actually finding the sponsored version of the god. The sponsor was Retrix, which is that Remix's son? So during all of this, Carl gets blown up, blown to smithereens. He says that he feels his brain being sloshed like it's slush, and then he doesn't understand how he's still thinking. Which makes sense. How is he still thinking? Goes back to that Avatar thing. I don't know. Again, I'm pretty good at making books more complicated than they really are. But so he gets blown up to smithereens and is being stabbed and pummeled and slammed into the floor over and over again while he's trying to heal himself over and over and over again. And then immediately after that entire ordeal, he finds Milk. So back when I was first reading this, I kind of looked it up because I wanted to just commiserate with some people about that whole scene. And all I found was like this one kind of thread where they were wondering why Carl was crying. And the only explanation that some people had was that he had just, got blown up and went through something extremely painful and traumatic. And now he's finally letting it out, which true. But also I think the bigger thing is that he sees that Milk, the sixth author of the cookbook from before Mordecai's time, is still in the dungeon, is still working through her indentureship, is in a literal depression nest. He's been following all of her stuff and she's been trapped there and hidden there the whole entire time that he's been in the dungeon and for thousands of years beforehand. That's also like what's going to happen to Carl. Carl's doing all of this, fighting for his life, fighting to change things, fighting to end this, fighting to give some payback to these people. And then after something that's extremely hard and traumatic and painful, he sees that one of his sisters from the cookbook is still trapped. In that moment, I personally think that I would look at that and I would be like, what is the point if I'm just going to be trapped here for thousands of years? Like what, And then maybe it would bolster me later. But like at that moment, like I would probably break 4 Milk. I'd break 4 Milk. He says he doesn't break, he is releasing, right? How Donut, after the Butcher's Masquerade, said that she couldn't cry and she was really worried that she couldn't cry, and then she finally got to cry. I think this was also his moment where he wasn't crying, he was numb to it all, and then finally he saw Milk and he realized everything that was happening and he finally got his feelings back. So not a breaking, but like allowing the emotions out and to pour out. So that was heartbreaking and heartwarming all at the same time. Also, can we talk about Li Na? That was pretty badass. That's pretty awesome. Scary, but I don't know, really cool. And the fact that she was able to level those skills, those spells, like up to 15, like extremely quickly. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. She really won out during this little operation where she got to do it from a distance too. But having all of that stuff happen really added to the horror, but I don't know, it just made it like happen like super fast. But now that the Nagas are all gone, we can focus on the Katya and Donut portion of them getting to the next floor. That big obstacle of getting rid of all the other Nagas is now finally over. So that's good. That's a relief. Still not over yet. Okay, and now we have Justice Light talking to all the Sluggalos, building some kind of big trap thing, and realizes, well, he didn't realize, he apparently knew because he has a neural implant, that one of the Sluggalos was actually a changeling. And it leads to a really interesting conversation, and I can't wait to see what that all comes to be. It apparently has to do with gods and the, what was it called? The gate of the feral gods. And apparently Juicebox has like her own like people or assassins in place to take out all the warlords. Does that include Carl and Donut? And if so, who is replaced? I don't think it's Katya, because I don't know if anybody would do like go through all of that, and I don't know if that could trick Carl. Was it maybe Zhang or Lee Jun? Maybe it's Samantha, because right, Juicebox touched Samantha. Probably a bunch of other people touched Samantha. And then also when Carl went to go use Samantha to open the portal, she had to open her mouth and she didn't make a crude joke or anything. But then later Samantha comes back talking about her mother and how it's not her mother. I don't know. So maybe there isn't anybody there, but apparently there was a lot of people in that temple and they all got to touch the ogre guards, and someone who touched a god died. I don't really know how all that works out. I don't know which ones of all of those people were changelings, how they even survived, because Lena like massacred everybody from a distance instantly. Like, oh, but I guess they were marked as an ally. Huh, okay, that answers my own question. Thanks, guys. But yeah, I'm really interested in what Justice Light's whole trap big plan that he's been working on for centuries is. I'm excited. And also we heard about his sad story and what actually happened to Dante. This whole world. It's senselessly cruel for no reason. I don't get it. I don't get it. They don't get it. And yet it persists. What is it? So we have the 8th book, and then we're getting 2 more books after that. I don't know how all this is going to wrap up. I don't know how, like, there's so many questions. Again, maybe I'm just making it more difficult than it needs to be, but it's just so interesting to me. I feel like it could go in a million different directions. I feel like when somebody says something, it could mean 3 different things. I don't know. But anyway, I'm on page... Oh, my cat's sitting on my book. I'm a little bit over page 500. I don't remember where this is right now, but I have like 100 pages to go if I want to catch up from yesterday to make today's goal. I don't know if I'm going to end up doing that. Wish me luck. Let's go. Let's see how it goes. So let's see. I'm already, a little bit tired voice here, so... But I don't need my voice to read. So I only got up to page 600 yesterday, which means I'm 55 pages behind, and I have 259 pages to read today. We'll see. Maybe I'll have that last push, because, the last couple 100 pages at the end will make me want to stay up to read. I know that I'm getting the 8th book delivered tomorrow. I'm not sure what time. So if I fudge the numbers a little until it being like before the 8th book gets to me, maybe I'll be able to do it. Yeah, but this is definitely a time crunch now, so wish me luck. Okay, so last night before I went to bed, I came across 2 things that I found really interesting. One, Juicebox decided to do a emergency action, so that way ascendancy rules apply to the gods on this floor, on the 9th floor now, and that includes that they can't appear as the sponsor form. They have to appear as the god form, and that when the god is summoned, they have to come. They don't get a chance to say, no, I don't want to come. So I feel like the second part really works in their favor, so that way the changelings can touch as many gods as possible. But I'm wondering if it just had to be a package deal for that, or if there's something significant where the sponsor needs to be inside of the god armor, the soul armor. When a changeling touches the sponsor that's inside of the soul armor, do they get both? Can they change into a god and also change into the sponsor? And if so, what are the implications of that? Can a bunch of are changelings real? Do they work outside of the dungeon? And if so, can they now mimic both gods and also world leaders and whoever else is a sponsor, all those rich people? And then the other thing that I found interesting is that the warheads, the war mages' heads explode like 10 minutes after they die, which means that back in, floor 4, the Iron Tangle, when Carl brings that War Mage's head into his inventory, that was a really smart move, but he didn't realize it was a smart move. He was just doing it because he loots everything. But apparently saved their butts because exploding head. Okay, I'm sorry, what? What was all of that with Architect Houston? What? Ew. Like, ew, but also like, and Lee June. Architect Houston and that the unwashed or the beautiful place or the personification of the nothing. And the fact that Carl didn't go through it when he was in the gloom wraith phase, I don't know what's happening. Do you think that it has something to do with the Altry? Is that being also the Altry? Is it kind of a counterpart to the Altry? Because of the roots. Like, it says that its feet are like roots. And that can just be coincidence, of course. And it probably is, but it keeps saying roots. It could say tentacles. It could say something else, but it says roots. I feel like that's very specific. And because Lee June kind of speaks through this creature at the time of his death, or like while he's passing through, and the Altry is supposed to like connect everything, it kind of just seems like it's a part of that. And what did Architect Houston mean by, it's really you, it's not just an avatar? And what does that mean for the game? And is this only possible because Carl shut off the containment field? And again, going back to my unhinged theory in my first video, is all of this in the game for a ritualistic, real god sacrifice type thing? And is it now actually really happening because all the safeguards are off? Probably not. That's probably too complicated, but this is just, I don't know, this is confusing and another layer, and added to that everything that we've been learning about Apito and that memory crystal and, Eurillo not actually going after Samantha. What is happening now? What is happening now? And Architect Houston says that it's always been there. And why do you think that we've been coming to the game every year? I don't know, that's so confusing, and I'm so interested in finding out what happens. But I'm also reeling from everything that just happened. I can't... Lee June, come on! It's a battle, and like some of the top people weren't good, but we barely even got to hang out with him. Alright, so random thought. Do you think that the thing that Juicebox turned into, that personification of the nothing, do you think that's actually a primal? Do you think that's what a primal looks like when it doesn't take a shape? Alright, a couple of cute things that have happened so far is Jamal got his super-powered legs so he can hop. And he also has Ren's flamethrower, which I think is kind of adorable, and I want to see how he uses it. Also, we keep hearing about how Chris and Clayton, the Cretan, are continuing to hang out, and I'm wondering if they're, best friends, or if they're, if they got a crush, if they're dating, if they're little cuties together. I think that would be really cute. Okay, so a little bit of a plot twist. Eurillo, who is supposed to hate Samantha and chase her, just wants to talk to her. I'm really interested in what he has to say. And also, because he's in the realm, the Apito memory crystal is glowing and going off like a rainbow disco ball, which great for a stealth mission. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. But again, is it Apito in the crystal? Is it somebody else? Is somebody pretending to be Apito? I don't know, but I hope we find out. I don't know if we're going to have to wait until the book about the 12th floor to find out, but I hope we find out about Eurillo by the end of this before he's, sent back. Okay, that part with Carl and the madness and the mind effery. I'm super excited that he got a skill up to level 16 in pretty much like one book. And that he's now pretty much immune to all of those spells, and probably She Maria, unless she's also growing powerful, but she's not supposed to be. I don't know what's going on there. But that whole section where he's thinking about his dad and the books, and his feet are wrapped in the Altry. Is that voice in his head the Altry, or is that voice in his head Signet? Except he said that it's a male voice, but he said that he's part of the family, which is like what Signet said. So is it the Altry? And if it is, what does that mean going forward? And going down further, can they find more pieces of the Altry as they go down? Because the roots are supposed to go all the way through, right? And if the Altry can speak to him, does that mean that there's like an entity trapped in the Altry? Is the Altry, just a living being that is a tree? I mean, it's right, there's the plants that are sentient too, so is it just a sentient plant? Is it a godlike sentient plant? And then this happens, just in time for him to get invulnerability against Eris, the god's huge power that a sponsor accidentally unleashed because she was panicking. But it kind of screwed them all over because now that sounds horrific, to be trapped where you're aware but you can't move. That sounds awful, and thankfully Carl is not in that mess, but unfortunately, like, everybody else is. At the same time, Louis is falling and panicking, and he says some things that I'm really interested to understand what that meant. The cop's husband was right. And then he's talking about telling Katya, I'm sorry for being a failure, which he's not, right? A dragon happened. But why Katya specifically? Why her? I don't know, those are two things I'm really interested to hear about. And hopefully Louis survives so we can find out. Also, just some of the wittier humor here, or I guess it's not witty, it's like timing humor here is just Carla's like, you know what, these people are smart, they'll figure out a nice, safe, sound plan to save as many people as possible, I'll just worry about me. And then, Donut commits an atrocity. Just like that perfect, like those perfect beats. I love that. I understand that. Some people hate that. They feel like it's too cheesy, but I love that. And then slight side note is that Hypocrisy is apparently afraid of a Pito or a Pito's crystal. I wonder if he had anything to do with trapping her or killing her, or, what the history is there. Because right now that whole thing with him and Metis and Eris is its own whole thing. I don't know. It's hilarious and it's gross. I guess we'll see what happens there. Okay, what? Warlord Agatha? Agatha is a war mage now? So that means Agatha was turned into a flesher. But how does that work with her being a residual? Or was she just a Voltae worm? I'm still really confused on all that and what that means. Speaking about the residuals again, do you think that has anything to do with the whole Altry / beautiful place / personification of the nothing? You were here all the time. Is that just all the residuals are going back to that place to be with that entity or add themselves to that entity? Or I don't know. Is the Altry and that entity, is that the primal engine or the like new baby AI or whatever they call what was seated in the middle of the planet? I don't know. I don't understand. There's so many ways this could go. But anyway, the whole point of this is that the war mages are now a team and they're occupying Lyricos. Juicebox team seems a little effed. They made an emergency action where if somebody takes over another team or if another team loses, then all the members of that team now die. So what does that mean, like, for Juicebox and the Crawlers? Like, is it only, like, every man for themselves now? But the AA does have a caveat about a team who is still on the battlefield. So how do you get off the battlefield? Anyway, I'm finally where I should have been last night. It is, almost noon. So yeah, that's how today is going. Got 204 pages left. We'll see if I could do this. Okay, so apparently Victory made a deal with Porthos before she was even picked as the adjutant. Mind blown. And Rosetta keeps saying that Porthos does this, that he pretty much predicts what's going to happen. The apothecary is also working with the open intellect blah 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 with Porthos, and apparently the apothecary is working against Agatha. Maybe this whole thing is starting to get very confusing because we're getting a bunch of people's different perspectives on, what a primal engine is, what the eulogist is, what, the purpose of the AI is, and what the goals for all of these individual pieces are. We have the AI's version of it written in descriptions. We have what Odette said. We have what Rosetta said just now we have Polly and Agatha and Oren when he did that speech, and everything says something just a little bit different. So it's getting really confusing, and if I was reading this slower, I would have had my notes together to see like what are the differences and what's the same about what everybody is saying about these different systems or beings or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, but right now I'm a little bit lost because I have like everything highlighted but not written down. So I'm really confused, which I think is the point. Everything's being thrown at Carl and he doesn't know, and he doesn't know what information to trust. So it makes sense to be confused, but I'm not enjoying it. Or I am enjoying it. I want to be able to keep the facts straight. But it's impossible right now for me anyway, with the way that I'm reading this, to try to get this finished today. And another side note, I think it's fun that we've gotten both a Star Wars reference and a Star Trek reference in this book. And I don't know, that's just really fun for me because I love both of those fandoms. I'm not an either or. I like them both. We're seeing that Donut is a really good planner as far as her spells go. Some of the things she's doing is kind of horrific, but she does have a plan in place for do this, then this, then this to try to get her friends free and safe and as many of them alive as possible. And it's just wonderful to see how much she's grown from being a newly sentient cat to this whole being that she is now. At one point, the warlords start targeting the gods to try to conscript them. Oh, and side note, Bianca here is amazing. I think that was a really fun little snippet of her in action. But going back to it, so the warlords are trying to get to the gods, and Victory and the other adjutant theorize that they're trying to end the Ascendancy Wars and kill all the crawlers so that way they could shut down the AI, the whole system, early. And they think that it's because Agatha thinks that the AI is a danger to the eulogist. But another theory that I have is maybe it's because like they overheard Juicebox and Justice Light talking about doing something with the gods, and so they're part of the system trying to stop them. Oh, and we just heard Juicebox talking to Samantha, saying that she knows who she really is and that she can help her figure it out, that she's lost her mind and doesn't understand. I'm really excited for that. I think earlier I mentioned that maybe Juicebox turning into that big black with the roots and everything, it was Samantha because she touched Samantha, but maybe it's something else completely. But Juicebox knows who she is, so I'm really excited. I hope that comes up sooner than later. But also a very unhinged theory that would be hilarious is if Samantha is a Pito. Like everything we hear about Opito and like nature, mother, blah blah blah. Like if it's Samantha. I don't think so. I really don't think so. But like, wouldn't that be like a hilarious twist? Do we know if Bomo gets to come back? Or is he just... Was that him being dead? Is he dead? Is he gone? I'm not really into that. I really liked all the Cretans. And I also really liked Toyotomi. I thought he was going to be a really good addition, or at least get to the end. He was very excited to be able to help. Anyway, I had to pause there. I'm gonna go see what's up with Lucia, but... Okay, so after all of the times that Carl gives Donut a hard time about her running panicked after Mongo and Mongo's in trouble, Carl does the exact same thing in like the most epic way possible, blasting a bunch of skills just to get himself across there to go get Donut. What? So that was a fun sequence, and he is definitely a hypocrite. And also we get the AI, in the little description saying that Cricarian Prime is in the nothing making the war mages this conscription potion for the gods, and somehow it ended up in Carl's hands. And Ferdinand has a moment of bravery too, running up there, get next to Carl. That just happened. But yeah, Ferdinand jumps up to try to save Donut. That was interesting because he's been such a coward this entire time. But Donut is in trouble and he jumps up there with Carl. And here we kind of see that Lee Na is blaming Carl for what happened to her brother. She doesn't specifically say it, but she says something like, I have to go save all these other people so that way there's not like more needless death from your chaos. And I guess, yeah, he's the one who he's the one who decided that they should open the gates of the feral gods as distractions. But Lee Jun decided to be a distraction and help save people. So I think she's being a little bit critical, but I mean, she's also extremely upset and sad and grieving and angry and going on a rampage, so understandable. And we get a little tidbit that Bomo is going to survive. So that's great. Super happy about that. I was scared for a second. And we see that they kept Raoul, which I'm so excited. I love that little crab dude so much. He's so hilarious and adorable. So I'm glad that he's still going to be with the gang for a while. And then we have Lucia, the whole reason why Carl jumped up there in the first place. And we learn that, well, I guess this isn't the first time we're hearing it. Florin kind of mentioned that there are a bunch of kids kind of trapped in there with her. But we see it firsthand from Carl's point of view, finally. And it's confusing and it doesn't make sense. One of the kids comes out and talks to Carl and says that you have to get them separated and then kill Gus, kill the dog. But then once Carl does it, this Lucia, or maybe it sounds like that isn't even a kid, because she sounds like she, I don't know, knows a lot more or is like separated from the kids. But she says that you should have killed both of us while there was a connection. And then now nobody could kill Lucia because there's 120,000 kids inside of her. Like, I guess their consciences while their bodies are, I guess in India, I guess that's what they're talking about, the kinder section, and where there's all that fire. So I guess like a war for the kids or something. And they don't even really know how it happened. And then this Lucia, or the entity, says that the eulogist has another ally. Is that the Alejandro? Was Alejandro tied to Lucia through Gus? And now he's free? It's very confusing, and then Lucia gets whisked away, even though she's under the conscription spell, which Carl using that, I don't know, was that planned? Was that what he was supposed to use it for? I feel like, for me personally, that feels like a waste. It was like a level, what was it, 18? And you could conscript a god to yourself. That would have been an amazing weapon on the 12th floor. But yeah, things are starting to heat up. I have about 140 pages left. It's about 7 p.m. I don't usually stay up very late. I mean, okay, I stay up occasionally till 12, especially this week. I've been staying up until about 12. But if I want to finish this might be an even later night. And I guess if we're counting up to midnight, I will probably fail. I don't think time-wise, unless if I start speed reading, which I don't like to do because I really like to absorb it. Personally, my brain just doesn't work in a way where if I'm speed reading, like I just tend to not absorb what's happening. I'll know what's happening, but like 20 pages later, I kind of forget. That's just me. Maybe I just have to practice more. So reading at like my pace, I don't think I'm going to finish by midnight. But we'll see. I'll check in later. What the fuck? What the fuck? This whole entire part with the goddess Eris. I'm so confused. There's so many things here. And Dona is now the Oak Fell and the champion of Nekbet, aka Odette. I'm getting really excited for the ascendancy portion and all of it. Like, I've been so interested in all this, like, God stuff from the beginning and have been taking really close notes on it until I had to start reading faster. But this is just insane. I don't, like, so much in a matter of 4 pages, and I love it, and I'm so excited. So the warlords only came for the scavenger's daughter? Do you think that's Samantha's daughter, the Sandus? So yeah, I'm on page 261, and I have about 100 pages left. It is 10 o'clock. I don't know. I'm like at a point where I do really want to finish the book. You know when you read a chunky book and you get to the end and so there's like only like this much left? And in a smaller book that's like 20 pages, so you want to push, but in a larger book like this, it's 100 pages. That's where I'm at. I'm like, oh, I'm so close. I want to finish it. Like, I want to do the challenge, but I also like, I want to finish it. But it's also 100 whole pages. That takes me 3 to 5 hours, depending on how fast I'm reading. I'm already tired, so I don't think an all-nighter is gonna do it. So let's see. Goal 1 is to get it done by midnight tonight. I don't think that's happening. So goal 2 would be to get it done by the time I go to bed. And then goal 3 will just be to finish it before I get that 8th book delivery. I don't know how early it's gonna come. Sometimes the deliveries happen pretty early, so that might not even happen either. Let's see. I end a lot of these with let's see, but that's really, what else can you do? I absolutely meant war mages, not warlords. And I meant that I was on page 761, not 261. Yeah, my brain's working. Okay, well, I failed the 2. It is, say, oh, it is after midnight, and I'm on page 802, and I'm going to bed. We'll see if I can finish the book before the package gets here tomorrow with the book. We'll see if I could finish the 7th book before the package with the 8th book gets here. But I'm going to bed so I can enjoy the ending of the book. Okay, well, that's loud. That keeps happening. There's road work this morning, I guess. Road work. Good morning. It's like 8 o'clock, and my package is still en route. The last update was like at 2 a.m., so let's see if I can get these last 60 pages in. It is 11:30 a.m. and I just finished the book. It is May 12th, so failed the first one, getting it done by midnight on May 11th, and failed the second one, getting done with it by the time I went to bed. But I did finish it before I got the book. The book is en route. I don't exactly know when it's going to get here, but it left the shipping facility about a half an hour ago. So hopefully by the end of the day, but either way, I think I'm going to take a little bit of a break and like let this all settle. But anyway, I'm going to go get my second coffee and get dressed and talk about what the heck I just read and some of my theories. And I just, such a good book. I love that this one kind of refreshed all of those kind of, all these questions and like a million things could be happening and what's actually happening, because I feel like we were wrapping up different plot points up to this point. And so this book felt like a little bit of a refresher and like expanded some of the remaining plot points. Look at him. Isn't he so cute? He's so precious. Such precious good boys. Alright, I'll be right back. Okay, that was a wild ride, and I have a lot more questions. So, first of all, I'm sad about Urillo. I really wanted to know what he had to say to Samantha. It seemed like his main goal of being on that floor was just chasing after her to say something to her, and that seems important. Also, I'm really confused about Empress. He is always described as, having a short fuse and being crazy and being kind of malicious. But all we're seeing him being is like a little softy. Back with the bubbles, he was just chasing after the puppy, and now he was just crying to Samantha. That is nothing like the AI descriptions and the descriptions of some of the people we've talked to about who Empress is. It's really interesting. And then on top of that, we have Donut and Katya's descriptions for the Oakfell anklet, the Oakfell anklet, which, hey, now she's the Oakfell, woo! And Katya has the scavenger mother of mother's bow. So I need to go back and reread those descriptions because that's going to be important. I don't know if it's important in this next book that's about to come out or if it's only going to come up once we reach the 12th floor. But that's pretty cool. That's amazing. I really like that all these little connections are starting to come together. And I briefly touched on those last night, but the goddess Eris, the chaos goddess, all of those little tidbits of information. Then right at the very end, we see the pickaxe, which might have to do with Brittany. And at the very end, in the epilogue, we see that that goddess is in the way station. Ah! So we know that Justice Light was doing some kind of interdimensional trap, and that Juicebox had a plan for all of her changelings to touch gods. So what is it? Was that a god from the game because the AI's influence has been extending out that far? Because we got the other information from the epilogue that all of the, resistance fighters have their guns that only work in those zones are now all functioning. So we know that the AI influence or the zone influence or whatever we call it is getting further out. So is it a god from the game? Is it Juicebox or a different changeling who got to touch the goddess, possibly while inside that ball? Is it something else? Is it, the primal manifestation? Is it like real gods? Did they trap all these gods to do this, sacrifice, and now they're finally like getting out and they have like a bigger influence? I think that's the most ridiculous theory that I have. I don't think that's real. I think it's either the AI, the game, the coding, and it's getting out further to wherever that AI can touch, or it's a changing. I'm also wondering, like, it touched that node. They said the way station was near the closest node to Earth. Can they now connect to the center system? Can those gods and goddesses and different parts of the game start affecting the center systems? Is it interconnected like that, or does the Earth AI system have to spread further? And speaking of that, right, we have the new Mantis planet, blew up, and then the planet where the last games were held, the Aral system, that went dark. And it seems to have been affected by what is happening within our game, like Gus dying. So is the Earth AI already connected to all of that, or are there other people behind the scenes doing all of this stuff at exactly the same time? Another coincidence, Agatha left right after Gus died. So is that the connection? There was a mention from Lucia, or the person pretending to be Lucia, that the eulogist got another ally. Was that Agatha? Was that Alejandro? Was that the new AI systems that are going offline or coming online, or whatever is happening in that new Mantis system or Aral? That is, I don't know, so many possibilities. And then speaking about Donut, she makes a comment about how she wanted all of the scars from this traumatic experience to be on the inside. Well, she said it because she didn't want any scars on the outside, which means she acknowledges that her scars are on the inside. She's also been turning into a great warlord and leader. And then she just leveled up like insanely from doing something kind of horrific. And I'm really interested to see if her personality changes at all in the next book, or if her decisions start to change or be influenced by, one, her power leveling, and two, this whole experience that she went through. And I'm so excited that Milk got a resolution at the end of this, that that we find out that her recipes in the cookbook were written in a special ink, and she didn't realize that they were going to fade over time. So that's why Carl didn't understand what to do with the Tourmaline and didn't understand Rosetta's hints. And I'm a little bit upset that we didn't get a, apology moment from Rosetta to Carl, because Rosetta was really judging Carl by, like, I think he's too stupid if he can't figure out what this is. Meanwhile, those recipes just disappeared. But anyway, Milk was finally able to finish her stupid contract. That contract makes me so angry. But she was finally able to finish it by teaching all of the crawlers how to leave their spells for Carl and Donut and the remaining crawlers. And they all wrote such cute, heartfelt things. I love Milk. Milk is, And talking about sad, Katya going, I understand why it's necessary, and I understand that it's great for her character, and it makes complete sense in the grand scheme of things, but I'm going to miss her so much. She was one of my favorite characters, and now she's gone. And to get her to the surface, they finally killed Wan Qin Jinx. Mordecai got to have a hand in that. He dipped the arrow in his mom's ashes for a ritual that his people used to go through, and so that kind of gave him a little bit of closure. So that's great. But on the other hand, Ruby also got sent down to the 12th floor, so he doesn't have the kids to hang out with anymore. And it really seemed to me that, like, especially Ruby, like, Mordecai was growing very attached to that little girl. And is it going to break him all over again when his contract is up, when they're all through this and they have to leave her behind? Are they going to have to leave her behind? Is she going to be able to exist outside of the dungeon? Even if they win everything, can they bring her outside of the dungeon? And then going back to what we were talking about before during Voltig's little revelation of what functions outside of the dungeon, we have Katya has had her arm cut off, probably from when Carl was a spider. She lost a leg at some point. Well, both her legs, one entire leg, one like calf. I just, like, when and how? I know when she's in her smaller form, she has less metal protecting her. But I thought the goal was always to keep like as much of her actual skin parts close to herself. So I wonder if that just doesn't matter to the system. She went on dungeon sidekicks, so I wonder if she had already lost those limbs by then. Because right in the beginning with the Odette interview, she kind of changed back into herself. So during those interviews, could the audience see what limbs she was losing? I did enjoy the cute moment with Batista at the end there. Cute moments with Louis, like very, very cute moments at the end. I'm really interested to see what the former Crawler group ends up doing because Boomer mentions saving a pregnant veteran. So she's now a veteran. And how are they going to storm India? Is that going to be what frees all the children in Lucia's head, or is it going to be something else? Also, again, I'm all over the place. So this book, this series. But the former Crawlers, we only got the first 10 cookbook authors' stories in those little point of view snippets. And I really, really, really want to get more. So I hope the next book, maybe they're going to wait until the 12th book, but I would really like them in the next book. Maybe we even get flashes to what those former Crawler resistant group is doing out in the galaxy while Carl and Jonah are still stuck in the dungeon. The point of all of that is that I really want to hear the other, 14 point of views from those former cookbook crawlers. And I really hope that we meet more because the only ones that are alive that we know of so far were in the very beginning, the early days of the cookbook. So I think that was an interesting choice. And I feel like it naturally leads into there being more. So if there's not, I'm going to be upset. And then, so let's talk about Li Na for a second. First of all, riding a god. She rode a god. She's on a god's shoulders. She's on top of a god. Yeah. She used a god to kill another god. And now she can't heal because she mass marked every non-ally in that ball, and some unaffiliated got away and got down to the 18th floor. Now she's probably marked for death by a ton of gods, and she's going to never be able to heal herself. And it would be an easy end to the story if Lucia decides to take a deal, but we know it's not going to be that easy. I know it's not going to be that easy. I don't think she's going to take a deal. I just don't. Circling back to talk more about how things from in the dungeon, how they do or do not function outside of the dungeon, what is Louis going to do? Louis now has a flesh golem's lungs and heart, and they're not going to function outside of the dungeon. So he either has to take a really screwed up deal. He's going to have to not survive. He's going to have to live in the dungeon. He's going to have to get to floor 18 with everybody else and get either everything's going to blow up and it's not going to matter anyway, or he's going to need a really great, awesome deal. And then Tipid. I am so sad that this man worked so hard to get so far and to do so many great things, and now he doesn't remember any of them. And that's so confusing to me, because in the dungeon you can heal, so how did his brains get scrambled? Is this a traumatic, how Carl was speaking about the beds and not being able to have REM sleep and what that might do to our brains, to human brains long term? Was it something like that? Or something else? Because I thought you were supposed to be able to heal in the dungeon, pretty much heal anything, unless if you're specifically oh, this is incurable. So I don't understand how something got wrong with his brain if it was physical versus mental and chemical. I don't know. I still feel like that should be able to be healed by the dungeon powers. So that part really confuses me. And it brings up a question of Carl turned into complete mush. He blew up himself. He was literal liquid mush inside of his skin bag while he was rehealing. Is that going to affect him outside of the zones? And also back to Li Na. Everybody was so concerned with Carl using this ring. And then they're just yeah, give it to Li Na. Totally give it to Li Na. She can handle it. And meanwhile, she goes and she just marks everybody instantly at once and kind of starts to go insane and now can't heal. Carl gives up the ring at the very end. So proud of him for that. And Donut ate it because of the knee guards. And I think it's so funny. I think it's so funny that it kind of circles back to that because they were so, what the heck, Pony ate the ring and now Donut's eating the ring. But yeah, they were so worried about Carl, and I think he was pretty responsible with it. There's still something going on with him. I still want to know what that other voice is. I still want to know, he talks about the river and all those little hints that the AI is giving him about how the ring already like triggered something inside of him. It's not She Maria. It's not her husband. It's another one of a million mysteries, and like it could go so many different ways. Again, I'm loving this, but it's also just like some people I've seen describe this series as like if you just want to like shut your brain off and like enjoy yourself, and I'm like, how can you say that about that? Like there's so many like my brain goes a mile a minute while I'm reading this series. It's definitely thought provoking and just constant like every couple pages, sometimes every couple chapters there's not just the stuff going on in the book and all the mysteries in the book, but just the way you could relate what's happening in the book or the way they describe this bigger system and government and the way everybody's being screwed over. Like you could relate that to here. You could relate that to our personal history, our personal present, and our potential future. It's just nonstop thinking for me when it comes to this book and series. What's also really adorable and kind of screwed up is that everybody's telling Donut that they weren't aware of what was happening to themselves while they were in that ball. Then Florin kind of says, as far as Donut's concerned, yeah, we didn't know. But don't let her do that to us again. It's terrifying. Terrifying. And I don't know, also amazing that all of those people came together to not tell her. It warms my heart. It's super sad. It's kind of horrific. It's like another drop in the bucket with this book, though. And then two things about Samantha. One, she gave up the flesh golem for Louis. That's growth. That's either growth or she's always been like that and her brain got addled in the nothing. And maybe we would have learned that if Urilla got to live for a little bit longer, but, whatever. We also learned that she knows more about Empress's son's death, and she mentions a guy in a hoodie. And then she also mentions that she is pals with Maris, which is the figure that Carl got from the the figure that Carl got from the third floor. That is apparently one of the Shield Prince brother things. I am so excited. I don't understand how this series is only a couple more books long. But we have the 12th floor, which is the Ascendancy game. The 15th floor, which is Shield and all of the demons and stuff like that. And the 18th floor, which is the Billionaire Retreat. That's also supposed to be the big boss, Scolopendra, blah, blah, blah. Which, yeah, Scolopendra awake this early in the game. So again, that's probably going to speed up those floors, but I'm kind of disappointed in that because I really wanted all these little storylines to start to come together and to like see them out. And then another cute little moment is Sledge saying, I made a difference with a question mark, like hopeful. He had a really good heart and I think a pretty good character development despite not seeing him too often. Maybe it's just that I like how he fit into the group and it's not really character development. It's just, I don't know, he started to say more words towards the end. That's kind of development. And then we have Victory, that entire plot line. She's now the acting prime minister. I mean, yeah, girl, climb that ladder. But apparently she's not, like, she has less say in things than when she was a judge and the system's in chaos. That was still one way to use the system and to be honorable, but to work through loopholes. And I still like her, so we'll go with it. She does make a mention that she's going to get an earful about letting another CEO die. How she said it was perfectly legal within the game, but how they're still going to be mad about it anyway. Which completely contrasts about how Odette was talking about how Wan Xin killed Armita, and it didn't matter because it was in the game. So when Wan Xin died, within the game, within the rules, within the parameters, all those people are losing their minds. But when Wan Qing killed somebody within the game, within the parameters, it was totally fine. So while all of this was going down, the goddess Alethea was talking to Katya, and I think she became aware of the game. Not yet. I feel like it's more like the seeds were planted, but she is aware that there is another realm with more of her women, and she can't get to them, but she could sense them, but she couldn't sense them until Katya pointed them out. And so this opens up the doors with, are all these goddesses and gods going to start becoming aware that they're NPCs? Are they going to start waking up? Are they going to have their own personalities? And then, right, crazy prediction, that's not going to actually happen. Are they, again, the actual, like, versions of the gods, and they're trapped in the game? And are they going to break free? Again, don't think that's going to happen, but it's fun to think about. But then what is that going to mean for the 12th floor when the crawlers get there if they're slowly waking up gods? I don't know if they are, but the fact that this one got that far, and Odette's kind of on the inside, and I wonder if she, like, saw that even though she wasn't supposed to see that, and if she's going to start, planting seeds and working with Alethea and, I don't know, just waking up everybody. I don't know, but I think that would be a fun version. I think it would completely change the game on the 12th floor. Maybe they could recruit gods and goddesses and go down to the 18th floor and, beat the billionaires, and maybe, like, the Scolopendra isn't even going to be the final boss that they have to defeat, but they're actually going to just recruit them or convince them or wake them up. Maybe Scolopendra is actually the AI or the baby AI or the primal engine or a primal. I don't know. Again, I'm probably making it more complicated than it is, and it's just a video game for money, but it could be really fun. And speaking about Odette, is she part of the open network? No. Is she part of the open intelligent pacifist Porthos's network? I feel like she has to be. Unless if there's a bunch of different resistance cells, it almost sounds like they have to know each other and be working together, or at least working in the same system. And I think, like, learning that background and learning how they came together would be a really interesting development. So then the last thing I just want to touch on is that Carl has a wife? Some princess or something? How is that even possible? How is that allowed for him to be married while he's in the dungeon fighting for his life? Does it have anything to do with that contract that, what was his name, Rishi? The Naga had to do? But Carl never signed it. I don't know. I'm really interested to see how that works, because it doesn't, like, I have no idea how that's legal or how it makes sense or why that person would want to marry him anyway. I don't get it. It also just occurred to me that I haven't talked about Rend at all. I think he's a cutie. I am so excited that he and Mongo are getting along and that Donut is actually warming up to him. I think that he's going to be a great pet for Carl. I think at the beginning, Carl would have really wanted a tummy acher, and so the fact that he now has one, it's great. It's sad the way that he got Rend, but just seeing how Rend grew this entire time and just how well they're all getting along together, I disagree with Donut saying that, adding him in would be a bad idea. I love it. I think it really increases the dynamic. I'm really interested to see how Rend grows throughout the next book too. All right, so those are a lot of my thoughts on these last two books. I sort of failed my challenge, but I sort of passed my challenge because I did finish before I got the book. I just got an alert on my phone, and the book is now sitting in my mailbox, so I'm going to go pick that up. So I guess it's bye for now, and I'm going to see if any of my theories come true, what kind of reveals we're going to get, and what happens to Carl and Donut next.